What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's me, Fitty Trent, and let's talk a little bit about hockey, specifically the playoffs, and even more specifically, the past of the playoffs. I mean, we all know that most of these teams have made the playoffs before. In fact, all of them have, of course. But when was the last time that they made the playoffs? When was the last time that they missed the playoffs? This is my favorite thing to do about the NHL, is look back at their history. So let's go with the Eastern Conference today, and we'll cover the West maybe in a separate video. Now, let's start with the Washington Capitals. They've only missed the playoffs once in the past 9 years. Now, that's pretty impressive to think about it. And the last time that they missed the playoffs, well, Joel Ward was on the team, and he was actually one of their leading scorers with a career-high 49 points. I think you guys remember that back when he played with the Alex Ovechkin era. And they were bouncing between three backup roles. Yes, there were three goaltenders competing for that backup position. The starter was, of course, Braden Holtby, but the backups were Yaroslav Halak, Michael Neuwirth, and Grubauer. And we all know how that turned out. I mean, Grubauer, he's still with the Capitals right now. Meanwhile, Halak is kind of the starter, aka minor starter, aka backup for the New York Islanders. We really don't know what to call him. And Michael Neuwirth is pretty much the starter for the Philadelphia Flyers. Moving on to the next team would be the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they have currently the longest playoff streak in the NHL right now, since the Detroit Red Wings are not making the playoffs this year. So, with the longest streak at only 11 years now, I mean, the last time that the Penguins missed the playoffs was the 05-06 season, and that was Merrill Lemieux's last season as he passed his team onto a kid named Sid. And it was also the last time that Marc-Andre Fleury was seen to have a losing record. I mean, he only went 13, 27, and 6 with a goals against average of 3.25 and a save percentage of .898. And we have not seen Fleury put those kind of numbers up since that season and his rookie season. So he's a much better goaltender now. And moving on, this is only the third time in franchise history that the Blue Jackets have made the playoffs. Yes, that's right. The last time that they did it, believe it or not, Nathan Horton was actually playing his last final hurrah in the NHL. He was on their team, and Mark Letestu was in top 10 for their scoring on their team. Meanwhile, Sergei Bobrovsky had his first ever 30-plus win season, and we've seen him do that tons of times since, but it wasn't until then that he did that, and that was the last time that they made the playoffs. Now, last season was the first time in 4 years the Canadiens missed the playoffs, and of course the main reason was because Carey Price got injured. But the time before that they missed the playoffs was the 2012 year, and the problem with them was that they were a lack of talent and that they were getting really old. I mean, Eric Cole had a career high 61 points, Thomas Caberlet was finally playing his final NHL full season, and PK Subban had a little bit of a slump of his career as he only had a career low 36 points in 81 games played, and I believe that was only like his second year in the NHL. Moving on to the Boston Bruins, they have been barely missing the playoffs for the past 2 years, and when they did make the playoffs, well, they usually made it better than the second round at least. The last time that they were eliminated only in the first round was the last year that Tim Thomas was their starting goaltender. That year, Tyler Seguin was their leading scorer with only his second year in the NHL, and Chara put up his last 50-plus point season. And it's important to say that that was the year after that they won the Stanley Cup. And then moving on to the team that Boston knows very well in the playoffs, the Toronto Maple Leafs. And the Leafs only made the playoffs once in 12 seasons. And we all remember who they played and how it played out when they did make the playoffs. Now, the time before that, they made a second round exit in the 2004 playoffs. Pat Quinn was the coach with a record of 45, 24, 10, and 3. Your lineup was stacked with Matt Sundin, Joe Nieuwendyk, and Alex Mogilny leading the way at forwards. And you had a great defensive core with Brian Leetch, Brian McCabe, and good old Eddie Belfour holding down the defensive side. Moving on, you look at the New York Rangers, who've only missed the playoffs once since the Henrik Lundqvist era. And that's pretty impressive, since before that they got the King, the Rangers missed the playoffs almost every single year. Most recently, 2003-2004 season, when they could only muster 27 wins. That was Messier's last year, and then he handed over the captaincy over to Jaromir Jagr, who wore it for a couple more years before heading to Europe. And finally, the Ottawa Senators. They've been, okay, off and on for the past few seasons, But there used to be a regular playoffs only about 10 years ago. In fact, 10 years ago this playoffs, they lost the Stanley Cup to the Anaheim Ducks. Now, the only thing similar between those Sens back in the day and these Sens in this day were two players, Chris Kelly and Chris Neil. Yes, both of them are still on the team today. Neil had 28 points back in the day. This year, he only has 3. And Chris Kelly, he's a little bit better, though. He had 38 points back in the day, and this year, he has 12. So, all these players have made the playoffs before, and it will be interesting to see what they do in this kind of playoff run now. If you're curious about the West, well, that video will be coming out either tomorrow or Thursday, I'm planning. So I hope you guys enjoyed. We got tons more hockey, tons more basketball, tons more WrestleMania and wrestling stuff, and of course, tons of NFL coming up. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode on the Bottom Line View. Do like, do subscribe, because we're just getting better, and it's only the best from here on out. Alright, thanks very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, as I said, and peace out.